Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Tonight's tale is about a man who is round of stature, bearded and balding. He does not know about the arachnid that is even now on his shoulder. Ah! Hey Frankensteins, tonight it is Alfred Hitchcock's North by Northwest. This is a movie that I have seen before, but looking back at stills, that's kind of all I remember, sort of the big set pieces, but not much more. I know Cary Grant's in it, and I love Alfred Hitchcock. I'm kind of excited to see this one again. I hope it's going to cleanse the palate after... In 1959's North by Northwest, adman Robert Thornhill, played by Cary Grant, is pursued in planes, trains, and automobiles by Philip Van Damme, played by James Mason, and his henchman Leonard, great Martin Landau, as well as various law enforcement. But why? Maybe the mysterious George Kaplan, Josh Malin, or the knockout blonde Eva St. Marie, can shed some light on the mystery, and just how did he end up in Abe Lincoln's nose? That description is really short. Even though this is a 60-year-old movie, I was totally surprised by so many things in this that I don't want to spoil any twisties or turnies for someone watching this for the first time, or maybe someone that's forgotten it like I did. Funny thing is, I completely missed why this is all happening, and I didn't care. I was sort of stunned by it at first, and it's very obvious I just didn't catch it. And that's the cool thing about this movie. Cary Grant said of the script to Alfred Hitchcock that this is so complex that no one's going to be able to follow it. So you don't get the big reveal at the end. You get it after every twist. Something will happen and then someone will explain what just happened. Cary Grant is great, but I think he was miscast. By his description, he's kind of an everyman. He's been married twice and divorced twice because his wives found him boring. He drinks a little too much. His big night on the town involves his mother going to see a show. She seems to find him a little bit dull as well. This seems like the kind of part that would normally be played by Jimmy Stewart. While he was shooting Vertigo, Alfred Hitchcock was talking about this film, talking about it so much that Jimmy Stewart was like, yes! Alfred Hitchcock didn't want him. He wanted Cary Grant. So Hitchcock waited until Jimmy Stewart was already on another film and then hired Cary Grant to do this part. It's so weird because Jimmy Stewart really is the everyman, where Cary Grant is James Bond just walking around. This movie was done before the first James Bond movie, Dr. No, which was like 62. Cary Grant was the one that the producers really wanted. Ian Fleming did not like Sean Connery for this part, but Cary Grant thought that he was just really too old for it for all the romantic stuff. This film has been referred to as the first James Bond film because of how everything plays together, how the action scenes go. The hero is smart and handsome, and he quips, and the villains are evil, but they're very suave. Even Cary Grant's gray suit is awesome. In 2006, GQ named it the most influential suit in all of cinema. A similar suit has been worn by Tom Cruise in Collateral, and Ben Affleck in the film Paycheck. This is a heck of a suit. The beautiful blonde Eve is played by Eva Marie Saint. She is stunning. Her character has to be different things to different people, and she pulls it off very well. And she is just amazing. And the chemistry between her and Cary Grant is great. She seems like she might be ice cold, but she's really not. James Mason is suave and wonderful as Van Damme, because he always is, and he has that voice that I'm not going to try and do. I can't get enough of that guy. And Martin Landau was kind of a revelation to me, because I don't remember him in very much outside of Bela Lugosi and Ed Wood, and this is a completely different character, and he's very young, and he's very intimidating. The censors thought that he was a little bit too effeminate and wanted to censor his part, but again, Alfred Hitchcock stood up for him. And then Josh Malin is George Kaplan. And his part doesn't really add up to much more than a glorified cameo. I mean, they talk about him the whole way through. Like everything else he's been in, he just steals it. He can do more with a few lines than most people can do with a book of dialogue. Sadly, this is going to be the only Hitchcock film in this Warner Brothers box set because it's the only film that he made for MGM. Hitchcock and the writers said that they wanted to make the Hitchcock to end all Hitchcock. That was going to out-Hitchcock anything else that's come before. In his contract, and this was pretty revolutionary, Hitchcock had final cut. This was a long film. The studio wanted him to cut at least a half hour out of it, and Hitchcock in his contract said no, ended up cutting about 8 seconds worth. There are so many set pieces that people remember. The train, the car chase, Mount Rushmore, the auto plant, and the crop duster. One of my favorite shots of all time. Thornhill Cary Grant is waiting for Kaplan, and he's on some dusty road in the middle of nowhere, and that's where he's supposed to meet him. And this guy shows up, and you see the man, and you see Cary Grant, and you see the man, you see Cary Grant, And then they show the wide shot and they're like this far away from each other. With all the explosions, all the chases, all the mayhem going on. This is one of my favorite scenes in the whole movie. This is the first movie in the box set that references Singing in the Rain. I know there's at least one more. I'll keep a tally. The score is amazing, and the titles are amazing. The titles look like Mad Men ripped them off. There are lines and shapes that turn into a building, and it's just amazing. And then over that, you had Bernard Herrmann's score that sounds like Philip Glass, and later on, it seems like there's motifs of James Bond films. What does the title even mean? There's no North by Northwest on a compass. Maybe it's the airline Northwest, that you're going north by Northwest? It could be a line from Hamlet. Act 2, Scene 2. I am but a man north-northwest. When the wind is southerly, I know a hawk from a handsaw. Or maybe it was just a working title that stuck. This movie seems like it could go into a theater today if they'd cleaned up some of the special effects and made them more realistic using computer graphics. It seems so modern. From the very first shot of him in his office to the very last shot of a penis entering a vagina, which at the time was considered fairly risque compared to the last few films I saw that seemed like old Hollywood. This is as tense and as taut a thriller as I've seen in a long time. Everything in this film goes off without a hitch. Overall, this is one of the best adventure thrillers and one of my favorite Hitchcocks, and I have no choice but to give this a 5 out of 5 amazings. Join me next time for the Sword and Sandals spectacular epic Ben-Hur. Until then, I'm Uncle Tony.